Tropical storm Francine has formed in the Gulf of Mexico. We're going to talk about what to expect, when to expect it, where to expect it, as well as another potential threat we're tracking for next week. But first, if you haven't, got to ask you, please subscribe so you can get those future notifications, as well as helping this channel to grow. I'd greatly appreciate that. So Tropical Storm Francine in the Gulf of Mexico. We've been talking about this threat for a couple of weeks now. We had a tropical wave way out in the Atlantic a couple weeks ago. We talked about the possibility of it getting into the Gulf of Mexico, and we did a video at the end of last week, and we talked about that tropical wave tagging up with there was a low pressure system that's been hanging out over the coast of, I should say, off the coast of Texas, if I can talk today, teaming up, forming a new low pressure system, and then moving north and impacting the northern Gulf Coast. And unfortunately, that's exactly what we're seeing now. So here's the official track from the National Hurricane Center. X marks the spot. That's where our storm is currently, moving north-northwest and then starting to turn more north and then north-northeast into the coast of Louisiana and strengthening as it does so, strengthening into a hurricane probably by tomorrow, if not sooner. So let's go ahead, let's take a look at this thing on satellite. And there it is. It's really, really impressive looking structure at this point. Really healthy looking tropical storm, at least on satellite. Look at that beautiful outflow. Don't see much in the way of dry air getting into it. A couple things to point out. So the hurricane hunters went out there to see what was going on with this system, see what's going on in the lower levels at the surface as well in the upper levels, and they found a low level circulation pretty far away from the actual center of the upper levels, the upper level of the storm. So whenever it's disjointed like that, it's going to be really hard to see intensification. But then it made another pass through, and it found a new low-level circulation much closer to that upper-level circulation. So when that happens, it becomes vertically stacked, and once it's vertically stacked, then this thing can really take off. And I think that's happening as we speak, and the environment that it's going into is going to be very favorable for development, at least over the next 24 to 36 hours. So let's go ahead and talk about that real quick. We'll look at the water vapor imagery here, and you can see how healthy looking that is. Beautiful outflow, not pulling in any dry air. So again, once this thing's vertically stacked, it's just a matter of how strong does this thing get. Fortunately, it's not going to be over water forever, so it is going to have a limit. I think this thing gets to at least Category 2. Does it get to 3? I think it has an outside chance. It's definitely possible it gets to 3. I think 2 is probably most likely. If we actually zoom out here, so this area of blue, that's where it's pretty favorable for development. If you look to just the north of that, over like Texas and northern Louisiana, you see those yellows and oranges, that's dry air. So the longer it can avoid pulling that dry air in, the stronger it's going to get, the stronger it's going to be at landfall. So I think at least over the next 24, 36 hours or so, it's really going to start to intensify. I don't think it's going to hit on peak, meaning I think once it gets into that northern Gulf of Mexico and starts to close in on Louisiana, it's going to start to bring in that dry air, I suspect. So I don't believe it's going to hit on peak, probably just off peak. So if it does get to Category 3, which is possible, I don't think it hits as Category 3, more likely a 1 or a 2. But still, you want to prepare for worst case scenario and hope for best case scenario. Let's actually pull up a hurricane model here. We'll kind of talk about, or kind of show you what I'm talking about. So let's zoom in so you can kind of see the 993 there. That's the strength of the storm, right? That's low pressure. The lower that number is, the stronger the storm is. So if we move this forward into time, we're moving this into tomorrow, we see it drop down all the way to the 970s. And then as we go into the early hours of Wednesday, it drops into the 960s. There's a 962 there, 12Z Wednesdays. That's 7 a.m. Central Time. That's a really strong storm. So that's a healthy hurricane at that point, and then it levels off. So we don't see it strengthen. We actually see that pressure come up a little bit as we head towards landfall. So I don't think that we are going to hit on strength, but it doesn't matter, right? I mean, Category 2, strong Category 2, weak Category 3, not a whole lot of difference there. So I think we're looking at least a 1, most likely I think a 2 at landfall, outside chance of a 3. But again, prepare for the worst, hope for the best. Another thing that's, I think, telling on this is as it gets towards landfall, you can see it's a really northern heavy storm at this point. Most of its convection is on the northern side, not a whole lot of convection on the southern side. So that's an indication, or I should say a result of the model seeing that dry air being entrained into the system. So the big question is going to be, when does it start to take on that dry air? How long is it going to take that dry air in for? And that's going to result in the strength of the storm at landfall. So let's talk about the impacts of the storm here. So as far as wind goes, I think most likely arrival time of tropical storm force winds is going to be 8 a.m. on Wednesday, and then obviously hurricane force winds after that. And then rainfall, which is water is the number one killer in hurricanes. Let's move over to that if I can bring the right map up. So here's potential rainfall. So yellow is 4 to 6 inches. The orange, actually the first shade of orange is 6 to 8, and then you can see there in southern Louisiana, there's a little bit of a stripe there of 8 plus. So good bit of rain coming. So definitely some urban and some street flooding is going to happen. For sure. So you definitely want to stay tuned for warnings, and at least have a source where you get those warnings from. Pay attention to it, and if you're in an evacuation zone, you definitely want to be prepared, because we are going to be seeing some storm surge with this, as always with tropical storms. The red area there, so there's a large portion of the Louisiana coast that could see 5 to 10 feet of storm surge. So that's significant. And even away from that, you're still going to be seeing some storm surge, possibly even into Lake Pontchartrain. So you have you're going to be on the eastern flank of the storm. So east winds coming off the Gulf of Mexico, piling water in there, and you could see 2 to 4 feet of storm surge there. And then even all the way back in the Galveston Bay, you could see a storm surge of 1 to 3 feet. So switching gears a little bit, I think we might have another threat to watch here. This is far from certain at this point, but as we go into next week, I think the European ensembles are trying to pick up on something. Look at all these areas of low pressure off the southeast coast. So it's trying to hint at something possibly getting going there. If we switch over to I'm going to call it our trusty European AI now. Did a great job with Francine, by far the best model. It was super consistent. We talked about that last week. And it's showing something trying to pop there Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. Low pressure off the Florida coast, and then moving northward Wednesday off the South Carolina coast. So again, far from certain, but at this point, it's a potential threat that we'll have to watch. So please hit that subscribe button, get those future notifications. But that's it for today. Thanks for watching.